Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. Please, I've done a part one to this video. So if you haven't seen part one, to just get some context as to what I'm talking about. Sorry, by the way, I'm the Nerd Man, your host, and this is With Enough Prep Time. But if you haven't seen the part one, I'm going to put part one down in the small comments box in the comments section for you to be able to see it. All right. I just a small. I'm gonna go over in just what I've spoken about so far, just so that you can get an idea of what I've spoken about. Basically, we have Ray Fisher, his allegations, and his claim that Walter Amada owes everyone on the Justice League in the Justice League investigation an apology, right? So what makes Walter Amada the most dangerous kind of enabler is his willingness to blindly cover his colleagues. Had he succeeded in discouraging the Justice League investigation, we would not be here. He owes Charisma Carpenter and everyone other participant an apology. But here, Ray Fisher says, so you can better understand, this is another tweet from him earlier on, word for word, verbatim, so you can better understand how deep this goes. After speaking out about Justice League, I received a phone call from the president of DC Films, wherein he attempted to throw Josh Whedon and John Berg under the bus in hopes that I would relent on Jeff Johns. I will not. Okay, so what we have here is proof from Ray Fisher himself that Walter Amada had no problem with doing an investigation into Josh Whedon and John Berg, and the only person he wanted to leave out was Jeff Johns. Why is that important? Because Josh Whedon is the only person who even has any type of guilt associated with him since this investigation is completed. John Berg and Jeff Johns, nobody has come out officially against to say that they are bad people or they have done anything wrong or they were racist towards anybody in the cast or crew. So they have nothing on Jeff Johns or John Berg. Therefore, the Josh Whedon investigation, which would have happened, Walter Amada was perfectly fine with an investigation against Josh Whedon, would have exposed the Charisma Carpenter allegations, which are the only allegations that have any kind of meaning. I'm going to go through all of the allegations now against Josh Whedon and all of the tweets that have thus far come out against Josh Whedon, to actually go in further and say, look, I don't even agree that Josh Whedon at this point should be a social pariah for what has happened thus far. I think what he did to Charisma Carpenter is awful, and it's up to the conscience of anyone who wants to work with him whether they would support somebody who would do that to a pregnant woman. But nothing he did was illegal. He did something that was deeply unethical, but everyone in the world has done something deeply unethical. It's not showing him in the best light. I think it's horrible. I personally wouldn't work with him, but it is up to everybody else to decide that. If of course it is proved what Charisma Carpenter is saying is true. Now, the one place where I will say that Josh Whedon looks incredibly guilty, and so does Jeff Johns for that matter, and this is where I do have my suspicions against them, is that they haven't come out and declared in absolute terms that what the brush that they are being marred with at the moment is absolutely 100% untrue. That they had not sent any racist claims towards Ray Fisher, that they had not done anything nefarious on the set of the Justice League, anything unprofessional or nefarious. At least John Berg has come out and absolutely said that 100% he did not do that. So I don't know if it's their legal team or who it is that is telling them, or whether it's because they're actually guilty that they're not coming out and saying that all of this is nonsense. I don't know their reason, but that is the only thing thus far that has made me feel, wait a second, these people might be guilty of something. That does not discredit from the fact that Ray Fisher has till this day, nor any of the Justice League cast or crew, come out with any credible allegation against anyone, not even Josh Whedon himself, and that Ray Fisher now has the absolute unmitigated gall to use Charisma Carpenter's story, the horror that Charisma Carpenter went through 20 years ago, to somehow bolster his case against what happened on the set of the Justice League, which has nothing to do with it. Charisma Carpenter is brave enough to have come out and stated her absolute allegations against what Josh Whedon did. And Ray Fisher is now using that 3-5 page, very eloquently written letter expressing exactly what she experienced on the set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Ray Fisher is now using that to bolster somehow his case. He goes further with his claims, I think above here, saying Ray Fisher at LA Times and Charisma Carpenter, please amend this article immediately. I never declined to reprise my role in The Flash. Warner Brothers chose to remove the role from the film rather than address Walter Hamada's attempt to interfere with the Justice League investigation. Right? That's his latest tweet by Ray Fisher. Okay? So he said, while he found misconduct... So again, this is Ray Fisher's latest tweet. So again, coming out in absolute terms to try and throw Walter Hamada under the bus for something that essentially, Walter Hamada had nothing to do with. All Walter Hamada did for Ray Fisher to accuse him of being the most dangerous type of enabler was say, look, I don't want my buddy Jeff Johns involved in this investigation, and Ray Fisher, could you leave him out of it? And he tried to dissuade him, but never tried to prevent him from actually going through with an investigation. Actually, he said, fine, do an investigation against Josh Whedon and even John Berg, apparently, according to Ray Fisher's own words. So I'm not using anything other than the information Ray Fisher has given me. Okay? I'm not using what Walter Hamada said. I'm not using what Warner Brothers said. I'm using nothing except the information that Ray Fisher's given me to show the absolute fucking hypocrisy of what he's actually been, of what he's been up to and what he's doing. Up until now, Jeff Johns, John Berg, nada, nothing, zero, zilch has come out to suggest that they ought to be involved in anything that has been going on. At best, they were enablers and they were dickheads on the set of Justice League. That's at best what has come out. That they said some things that they didn't like Zack Snyder's movie. So for that, their whole careers ought to be destroyed. They didn't like a movie. Josh Whedon, the only thing that's come out is something that went out, that happened on the set of a completely different production 20-something odd years ago. Even Charisma Carpenter, when she said, I stand with Ray Fisher, was stating it only in regards to his allegations against Josh Whedon. She didn't say that she stands with Ray Fisher in regards his total allegations against Warner Brothers and everybody involved in Warner Brothers. How could she? Because she's never worked with Jeff Johns. Neither has she worked with Walter Hamada, as far as I know, and neither has she worked with anybody else that Ray Fisher accused. So I want to go on now to discuss Josh Whedon, because there's a lot going on with Josh Whedon here that is troubling to me. So we have from the Vampire Slayer, the cast of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We have a number of different accusations that came out about the cast of Buffy, from the cast of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So just to start off with Sarah Michelle Gellar, because this is where it started. Sarah Michelle Gellar said, "While I am proud to have my name associated with Buffy Summers, I don't want to be forever associated with the name Josh Whedon." It sounds pretty damning, I must admit, for her to say that. "I am more focused on raising my family and surviving a pandemic currently, so I will not be making any further statements at this time. But I stand with all the survivors of abuse, and I am proud of them for speaking out." Or "I stand with all survivors of abuse." Let me make that clear. But I stand with all survivors of abuse. She didn't say all the survivors. She didn't use that article. That's very, very important, because what she's therefore saying, "but I stand with all survivors of abuse," means she's saying that anybody who is a survivor of abuse, not a particular survivor of abuse, i.e., she's not saying that she has specific knowledge of the abuse of anybody who's come out in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer cast. So she does not have specific knowledge of what happened to Charisma Carpenter. And she says, "I am proud of them for speaking out." So she's not proud of, she's proud of them for speaking out, again, distancing herself from having any specific knowledge of what Josh Whedon actually did to them. That is a very, very important qualification. So let's go to her Instagram now. And like really try and clear this up, because this is absolutely very, very important when we're looking at this allegation. Okay? Because there was something else I think she texted after. So this is the allegation again. Then came Michelle Trachtenberg, right? Who said, "Thank you, Sarah Michelle Gellar, at Michelle Gellar, or Sarah M. Gellar, for saying this. I am brave enough now as a 35-year-old woman to repost this, because this must be known. As a teenager, with his not appropriate behavior, very not appropriate. I don't know what's with her grammar. So now people know what Josh did. The last comment I will make on this was there was a rule saying he's not allowed in a room alone with Michelle again." Okay, so let's unpack this. I am not calling Michelle Trachtenberg a liar at all. I do not see her as a liar. I do not see anything she's saying as necessarily false at all. However, this is a very, very vague, although she gives more information than Ray Fisher did, and at least the allegation that she makes, as opposed to the allegation that Ray Fisher made against Josh Whedon, actually shows him to that something bad must have occurred, right? Whereas Ray Fisher's allegations, he didn't, my barber wasn't credited. Somebody got color corrected on, in the Justice League movie. She at least says he was not allowed in a room alone with me. Okay. So let's unpack this whole statement together, right? Because so she's responding to Sarah Michelle Gellar. First of all, Sarah Michelle Gellar quite clearly has only stated that she doesn't want to be associated with the name of Josh Whedon. So I don't know what the reason for that is. That sounds bad, but maybe she just doesn't want that smoke. Maybe it's just she's moved on in life. As she says in the next statement, I am focused on raising my family and surviving a pandemic currently. So I'm not going to be making any further statements at this time. So again, what she's basically saying is she has nothing to say of any value about Josh Whedon. That's all she said here. So why are you saying thank you, Sarah M. Gellar, as if she's reported some kind of abuse or stated anything other than, she supports Charisma Carpenter for coming out and telling her truth, as the kids say these days. Not the truth, her truth. Now, again, I stand with Charisma Carpenter. Everything she did and everything she said was a class act. I believe her because there's a history going back of her having stated that this may have happened, and that she even said that she forgave him and she would work with him with Josh Whedon again. The only bit of her account that I have a problem with, if anything, is that she's saying, it's kind of like the Marilyn Manson thing. Again, I stand with those women. I believe what they said. I absolutely believe them. But it doesn't matter what I believe because I am not judge, jury, and executioner, right? I do not get to choose whether somebody is innocent or guilty. It has to be investigated, criminal charges, etc., etc. So what happened to Marilyn Manson is people are saying, when it happened to me, I didn't know it was abuse. But now on reflection, I realize it was abuse. If that is the case, that at the time you don't realize that something is an abuse, how is the abuser, the supposed alleged abuser, supposed to know it's abuse? If you don't know yourself, it takes you to hear the Me Too movement and other accounts for you to actually be able to say, actually what happened to me was abuse. Then, how is the person who did the abuse supposed to know that it was abuse? There's a real conflict there. I didn't know I was sexually assaulted at the time, but now looking back, I realize I was sexually assaulted. When an adult woman says that, it's very kind of problematic to me. If a child said that, a 7, 6, 8-year-old child, I would have more time for that. When an adult says that, it's like, really? And let me get this straight, because I want to make clear what Michelle Trachtenberg is. She's done the usual tactic, which is be known as a teenager. What does as a teenager mean? Because when you say as a teenager, I know on the show, I believe you you played from the age of 13 years old all the way to the age of like 20 something. I believe you were on that show for quite a while. So you've left it up to our imaginations. And I'm not saying, you're wrong for doing this. I'm just saying this is the problem with this accusation and how I'm supposed to interpret it as a reader. Am I supposed to believe that you're saying you're underage because you say you're as a teenager? Because as a teenager, you might have been 18, 19 years old as well. So I don't know what spectrum? 18 and 19, if somebody does something that is, say for instance, sexual in nature to you, maybe he asked you out on a date or something, I don't know, or he said, oh, you're looking really hot today. If he said that to you when you were 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, that is very different from him saying that to you when you're 18 and 19 years old, from a legal perspective, right? So saying you're a teenager is already kind of seems fairly deceptive. It seems vague. Again, a very vague statement, the kind of Ray Fisher-esque statement. So with his not appropriate behavior, what does not appropriate behavior? Was he swearing around you? He could have been saying curse words around you and your mother, or saying things that were very provocative, because he's Josh Whedon and he has this acerbic kind of sense of humor, and he's trying to write scripts that are funny, so he's always trying to bounce and stay in that humorous kind of mood, and maybe he says some things that are a little bit like risque in terms of his sense of humor at the time, and that was what was inappropriate, and therefore your parents said, you know what, I don't want her in a room with him alone. I don't trust him in a room with her alone. What do you mean by he was inappropriate to you? So again, the reason I'm not coming down really, really hard on this statement and what she's saying is because Josh Whedon hasn't responded to this. And I'm wondering why Josh Whedon's, unless maybe everyone, like his people have dropped him, like that's the only thing I can imagine as to why he, his label, everybody has dropped him. So he's looking for like lawyers or whatever to be able to respond to this. But why hasn't he responded to this? That makes me think there's something to this. But again, it's not proof. That's just my speculation. And my speculation doesn't matter. They are innocent until proven guilty. And I stand with due process. Okay? So it was not appropriate. So now people know what Josh did. How do people know what Josh did? You haven't told us what he did. The last comment I will make on this, so you're saying that you're not even going to clarify any of these very, very damning inflammatory statements that you've made against Josh Whedon. You're just going to come out, quickly snipe him when he's down. You didn't have the courage to come out way before this to tell, let's assume that now you're a teenager. You were a teenager who was 13, 14, 15 years old, 16, 17 years old. And Josh Whedon actually really did act inappropriately to you. Maybe he kept, he did one of those things where he's like, if you do something for me, maybe I can give you more of a big role on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If he did do something like that to you, right, and he was super inappropriate to you when you were 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and you've waited all this time to come out and say something about him, how many countless people could this man have abused? And you only think it's relevant to come out now, some 20 years odd later, to call him out on his behavior? How many young girls he's worked with could he have hurt in between? If you are basically saying he's some kind of ephebophile, he's a person who preys on young teenage girls. So now you can just casually come out and make a statement, not clarify, not even try and start some kind of criminal or civil process against him to ensure that he never is able to do this to anybody again, right? So you're saying, so now people know. No, nobody knows, because you haven't told us what he did. This is a statement very like a number of other statements that I'm kind of like, I stand and I appreciate people coming forward. I don't like this idea of telling my truth or your truth rather than the truth, but I appreciate that she came forward. If this is true, if he acted inappropriately to her, then then it really is her responsibility to make it very clear to the world, hopefully not through Instagram or Twitter, but through some legal process, exactly what Josh Whedon did to her, to make some kind of statement that can therefore be clarified later on what exactly he did to her, if it, in fact there was some illegal or highly unethical aside to what he did to Michelle Trachtenberg. And why exactly was it that you weren't allowed in a room? Who said you weren't allowed in a room? Was it the set? Was it the producers? Was it the studio? Was it your parents? Who was the person who said you weren't allowed in a room with her? With him, rather. These are all questions that need to be asked. So this has emboldened, just to make clear why I'm doing this, this has now emboldened the Ray Fisher stans to come out and say, and completely go on like Ray Fisher is vindicated because of the statements that are being made by the Buffy cast right now. Now, let's make something clear. These allegations against Josh Whedon, apart from the cruelty allegations, right? Like casual cruelty, which is not something, it's unprofessional, but it's him being an asshole, but it's nothing, worthy of canceling somebody for all time over. It's not Harvey Weinstein. It's not even that comedian who was, masturbating in front of Louis C.K. Level of behavior. It's not something that is cancelable. There was the asshole behavior. So the only two pieces of testimony so far, or accounts on social media so far, that have meant anything in terms of what should impact Josh Whedon's career beyond him being labeled a bit of an asshole and somebody who's hard to work with. It's probably more along the lines of someone like, someone who's an asshole and hard to work with, I'll give an example later of somebody that I'm talking about. But if that's the case, that he's an arsehole and somebody hard to work with, that's up to each person who wants to work with him, who says, is it worth it? Is his talent worth enduring the fact that he may be an arsehole? And maybe, on reflection, Josh Whedon could learn from his experiences and the criticisms against him to become a better person and grow from being that kind of arsehole. But the only two things that have been said is what Michelle Trachtenberg has said, with the inappropriate behavior, and that hasn't been clarified. We don't know what that means. It's very vague, and I don't know why Josh Whedon, other than maybe he is actually guilty, hasn't come out and said something against this. And then there's the Charisma Carpenter allegation, right, which, is something completely different, which was very well expressed, detailed, and, really, states exactly what he did. And what it shows, again, is not something that is Louis C.K. or any other, or even like someone like Bill Cosby, right? I'm not going to go into what I think of the Bill Cosby allegations, but like the allegations against him are more serious than the allegations against Josh Whedon. I think we can all agree with that. So there's different levels to these allegations, and Josh Whedon's, the allegations against him are very, very low down. Even Charisma Carpenter's, the only serious allegation that raises him to a level of something that you might think, oh, well, is this a Harvey Weinstein kind of thing? Is this allegation here by Michelle Trachtenberg? And she hasn't clarified anything, and nobody has forward to substantiate any of her claims. So now let's look what else said against Josh Whedon. So somebody else said, oh, this is interesting. I haven't seen this. So what is this exactly on Josh Whedon? Ah. Okay, that was somebody else. I watched that later. So let's just quickly get into this because I don't want to spend too long looking this up. So far, just to make clear, what has come out about Josh Whedon is people who have said that they stand with Josh Whedon, basically, and what he, they basically said, yeah, they stand with Josh Whedon. So I'll show you some of the posts about that. But then there was something else that two of the writing staff claimed about Josh Whedon, which I'm going to read here before I go into anything else. So Whedon, so let's see here. Okay, so one was Jose Molina. Casual cruelty is a perfect way of describing Josh. He thought being was funny, making feet cry during the cry twice with at least he stands with Charisma Carter as opposed to standing with Ray Fisher. Okay, so Jose says that. So Josh Whedon used to make girls cry. That's now a crime worth canceling over. Casual cruelty. To validate what the women of Buffy are saying and support them in telling their story, they deserve to be heard. I understand where all Charisma, Amber, Michelle, and all the women who have spoken out are coming from. I don't understand why. Why is she saying that? And that no. I know where they're coming from. So anything to add to anything? You haven't said anything. One more, which is the tweet that Jose actually responded to, which was Buffy was a toxic environment and it starts at the top. At all Charisma is speaking truth and I support her 100%. There was a lot of damage done during that time and many of us are still processing it 20 plus years later. Again, So the toxic environment was the whole environment was toxic, and because of that, you're blaming the person at the top, Josh Whedon. So did somebody else do something to you and you're blaming Josh Whedon? Or did somebody else do something to you and Josh Whedon ignored it? What are these claims meaning? And this is Amber Benson, right? So those are the claims against Josh Whedon. And then all we have, other than that, is various stars like, James Masters says he's heartbroken over the allegations, right? He says he's heartbroken over the allegations. Will always be honored character Spike on the set of so he says, while I will always played the character, the Buffy set was not without challenges. I do not support abuse of any kind, and I'm heartbroken to learn. So he's just found out of the experiences of some of the cast. I send my love and support to all involved. Right? Again, he's not admitting anything. He's not admitting that he witnessed anything or knew anything or has any special knowledge. He's just sending support. Let's see what the other actor from this said. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, David Boreanaz, the guy I hated. I always used to be a Spike guy. I never watched Buffy the Vampire too much. I wasn't a big fan, but I ain't Buffy. But anyway, that's another whole topic. He says, I am here for you to listen and support you, proud of your strength. And he says that nowhere does he make any allegations or say that he has any special knowledge of what happened on the set of he didn't witness of any abuse. So again, I ask the question, Josh Whedon has been accused only of one thing that is bad here. The only thing that he's been accused of is the allegation that Charisma Carpenter brought out. The rest of the people have all said they support Charisma Carpenter and maybe even Michelle sometimes, but they have no special knowledge, nor did they witness any of the abuse towards these people. So once again, I'm going to do one more person. And I think this is the last person because I think what she says is particularly interesting. So CC to Charisma Carpenter, my heart aches for you, and I am so sorry you have held this for so long. Your posts were powerful, painful, and painted a picture we'll collectively never unsee or unknow. Thank you. I hadn't known it, and I won't forget it. What does she say? I have no special knowledge of any of the accusations against Josh Whedon. I did not experience these things under Josh Whedon, but I respect that you experienced it. And she's saying, you painted a wonderful picture, which she did. She painted a lovely picture, or not a lovely, but a horrifying picture. Charisma Carpenter painted a horrifying picture that, people rightly should be angry about. But we need to think, well, what is the adequate punishment for this? Because it's not the same punishment. It can't be the same punishment as what has happened to people like the comedian Louis C.K. Louis C.K. This is what Louis C.K. did was worse than what Josh Whedon did. in terms of the pregnancy thing. He didn't sexually abuse her. He just was like not very sensitive towards her needs while she was pregnant, which is awful. He did it in the 90s. As far as we know, he's done nothing like that since. Okay? So it wasn't repeated behavior. Apart from that, accusations of being casually cruel and mocking to people because he thought it was funny. Maybe that was his sense of humor and he didn't realize because nobody challenged him on it to say, actually, mate, this isn't really funny and we're really hurt by this behavior. No one challenged him. So I frequently think of the saying, we are as sick as our secrets. Our secrets indeed make and keep us sick. What I'm learning more and more and have personally found most valuable is the profound healing can only come from naming and disclosing what actually happened. Beautifully stated by Eliza Dushku, pardon me for how I've pronounced her name. Again, I wasn't a big fan of the show or Angel, so I don't know these people very well. Beautifully stated by her. So what is she saying here? Again, she's stating the the importance of stating exactly what it was that happened to you. She's saying to Michelle, look at the post, beautifully laying out exactly what happened to her. Keeping these secrets will only do greater harm to you and greater harm to everybody who's judging the case. It will divide people. Whereas if you are able to state in a way clearly that is respectful of the rights of all the individuals involved, what happened, so that people can judge for themselves Josh Whedon and say, look, this guy is genuinely a dangerous, terrible guy in Hollywood who needs to be exercised and shunned from Hollywood for his behavior. You need to do what Charisma Carpenter did, except perhaps not do it via social media, do it via a lawyer, do it via something where you present your case properly, so that you can stop future people from being harmed by Josh Whedon. This is what I'm saying to Michelle. I'm also saying this to Ray Fisher. Now, Charisma Carpenter came out and she supported Ray Fisher. She supported her friend, and that's good on her. I don't think she should have done it, but that's good on her. She's supporting her friend, just like, Walter Amado was supporting his friend, Jeff Johns. That's what we do with friends. We support them, even when it might not be completely ethical to do so. That being said, Charisma Carpenter might have inside knowledge of what happened to Ray Fisher. But Ray Fisher has never put out a statement that actually states why he's calling Jeff Johns, Josh Whedon, or anybody else racists, why he's calling them abusive, why he said their behavior was gross, apart from something that Charisma Carpenter said 20 years ago happened to her. So, naming and disclosing what actually happened. The necessary first step, once someone's ready, is to freeing ourselves from our secrets, untold truths, which have kept us isolated, ashamed, and held hostage. Neglecting to name the power, gender, sexual, racial abuse. And I like this because she's clearly speaking here or implying the whole investigation. Because you know why I think she wrote this? I think Eliza Dushku actually likes I think in her own way she probably likes I really don't even know this guy that well, Josh Whedon. She actually likes him, but she doesn't want to come out and straight out defend him if he's been abusive. But she's trying to state that anybody who's accusing him now should come forward and state completely what their case is, and neglecting to name the power, gender, sexual, racial abuse epidemic in the entertainment industry, and for that matter, society in general, enables the abusers and only emboldens and ultimately fortifies abusive systems. So she's saying, without you stating the dynamics, stating exactly what happens to you, and saying that that is specifically abuse that you cannot abide by, right? That you are actually emboldening people who do this to continue doing it. If Josh Whedon was racist to you in some way, Ray Fisher, and you're not telling us what that was, other people who are racist in the same way, maybe he doesn't know that that is racism. Maybe he doesn't understand that, and it's only by telling him and explaining to him exactly what racist behavior he was supposed to have done that he will realize, oh, you know, actually that was out of order, or he won't. But at least we can then judge him to say, hey, you know, this is outrageous. How dare you do this to somebody for, you know, for it's absolutely racist and fuck you. So that's what she says, exposing the power, gender, sexual, racial abuse epidemic in the entertainment industry, and for that matter, society in general, enables abusers and only emboldens and ultimately fortifies abusive systems. Absolutely spot on what she said there. May you and countless others feel the solidarity and connection you have likely missed for too long. From courage come change and hope. It starts and will end because of courageous truth tellers like you. I admire, respect, and love you. And she's talking to Charisma Carpenter there, who was courageous in coming out and laying out exactly what happened to her, and letting Josh Whedon be able to, you know, say, hey, I don't agree with that account. That isn't what happened. She allowed Josh Whedon the ability to face his accuser and say, you know, no, that's false and that's false. And he hasn't. And that speaks volumes. So in conclusion to all of this, what is the point of all I'm stating? I stand very firmly behind Charisma Carpenter. Ray Fisher, you've proven nothing so far. And I am more than happy to stand with you when you show exactly what and exactly when individuals supposedly did these horrible things to you. Or at the very, very least, tell us what happened so that you can face your accuser head on and they can answer your accusations. So thus far, the only accusation you came out with was about color coordinating, and it got shot down by Josh Whedon's lawyers straight away. So having said that, you know, and also Walter Hamada, AT&T, everybody, the head of AT&T, everybody stands with him. So you've proven nothing, you've done nothing. It doesn't help your case or benefit your case. And you using Charisma Carpenter's experience from 20 years ago is actually shows more about you, really, as a person than it does about Josh Whedon, in my opinion. All right, so thanks very much. That's my what I have to say on that. And please like, subscribe. Tell me what you think of the whole Josh Whedon situation. I would love to know. Thanks very much.